Hello, everyone, and welcome to the International African American Museum Center for Family History podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shelley Viola Murphy, and I'm thrilled that you've joined us today for what promises to be an engaging and insightful discussion. I'd like to give out a special welcome to the museum members. The podcast is live streaming right now on StreamYard, YouTube, and as well as Facebook, and also at the museum in Charleston, South Carolina. So we're proud to bring to you this monthly podcast series, which is always held on the third Saturday of each month. This is where we explore topics that bring African American history, indigenous history, all histories, genealogy, and cultures to life. These conversations are part of our ongoing commitment to connecting communities with their rich and diverse heritage. I'm joined by Jennifer Randall, who is the program manager and lead archivist at the Center for Family History, and she is there at the museum. And as we move through the discussion today on the Great Dismal Swamp, we want to encourage our attendees to actively engage. There is a chat box that you can use, post your questions. If you would put a Q in front of your questions, we will be able to bring them up and identify them. And that will help us to stay on task and also be a little more organized. So now let's welcome our distinguished guests. Please take a moment to introduce yourself. But first, I want to tell a little bit about who you are. And I'm excited about this because this is all new for me, as some of you will know. And this is Flying Eagle. This is Chief Samuel M. Bass, and he is the chief of the Nasman Indian Nation. And he is quite proud and honored to carry that title. So I'm going to ask him questions. You guys know the routine, a little of the round table type thing, and we'll be discussing and sharing information, clearing up some misunderstandings, but also there will be posts in the chat, which are resources and things for further research. So if you have questions as we go along, put them in the chat and we'll get to them after our discussion. So Chief Bass, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, your role as the chief of the nation, and how it connects to the Dismal Swamp.
Well, Dr. Murphy, let me make it clear. I'm a chief emeritus. I'm a past chief.
Thank you.
Now, the chief of our federally recognized nation is Keith Anderson. So
thank you.
I am serving as a counselor on the leadership council. And so with that, we have monthly meetings. We're engaged in trying to spread our wings. We have, as a nation, we have a medical center, which has been very successful, and not just Native Americans, but just for anyone who is needing medical assistance. But I really am, when I was chief, met Alexa Lawrence, Dr. Alexander Lawrence, and she approached me about serving on the collaborative for the Great Dismal Swamp. And I have been very honored. I'm still a member of that collaborative, and we're in the process of attempting to preserve the 100,000 acres approximately that's in the Dismal Swamp, going into 2 states, North Carolina and Virginia. So it's under, the study has been done. We're waiting on for a politician to pick up the mantle and put this in the form of a bill and see if we can get this acreage of the Dismal Swamp preserved forever. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And thank you for acknowledging Dr. Sutton. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to be here. So to just be the two of us, and we'll take it from there. But we do want to acknowledge the Great Dismal Swamp Collaborative. And of course, Jennifer will put some links in the chat as we go. The dog is okay. Don't worry about it. We're all family here. So don't worry about it. We'll be okay.
Well,
Probably telling us, probably trying to tell us something. So one of my first questions, a lot of people, and like I shared with you a few minutes ago, until I came down to Virginia, I had never heard of the Great Dismal Swamp. And I'm sure there's other people, that probably have not heard about it, or the federally recognized tribe of the Nasamon people. Can you share, is their location just around the North Carolina and the Virginia area of where the swamp is, or is the nation also in other places? And I want to clarify where this nation is located, say the headquarters and so forth. What is a little bit of the history there? And also I'll say congratulations on being a federally recognized tribe, and what that means to the folks, the families, the individuals. So I'll turn it over to you for that.
Sure. It has meant a great deal, especially with the medical side of being able to get assistance to our tribal members, which is also open to other tribes if they're here from out of state or whatever. That's one thing that's been great about being federally recognized is some people do live in some of our citizens are in other states, but if there are federally recognized facilities there, they can utilize those facilities for medical assistance. So that's been a good thing for our citizens. As far as living, our headquarters is in Chuckatuck, which is a community within the city of Suffolk,
Virginia.
Yes, in Virginia. And so with our headquarters there, we have an administration building there, and we have approximately 71 acres of property, but that we have put the property into a trust. We can't do any build outs or anything on it, but we have in our city of Suffolk, we have purchased some property elsewhere to where we'll be breaking ground in the next few months to build a cultural center. It's on Bridge Road. So that's in Virginia. But understand, Suffolk is land-wise is almost the largest city land-wise in the state of Virginia. So we're quite proud of the fact that we're located in the city of Suffolk. The city has been very supportive, and with that, understanding the federal regulations and all, being recognized comes with dotting a lot of I's and crossing a lot of T's.
Yeah.
As we call it, we have to walk slowly. And so there's a lot of things to learn about that. But the Dismal Swamp has always been there. And in the 1600s, I know we're going to get to it eventually to speak about the people who lived within that. I'll wait until you ask what questions you have.
I will.
But the Dismal Swamp is a dense, very dense forest, even though years ago, the federal government started allowing timber to be cut out of it, and especially like cypress, which the Native Americans use cypress trees mostly to try to build their canoes, which was their transportation. They could build some canoes that was as long as 30 feet, 40 feet long. So moving in the waters and around, the Dismal Swamp was vital, not just to the Native Americans, but also to the English and the Spanish who was discovering. They use that term discover, but as a Native American, my ancestors were already here. They just showed up and started visiting,
They were visitors.
Right.
Yeah.
Like like a neighbor moving, suddenly showing up on your door and want to spend years and years with you. And that's what's happened.
And they kind of took a few things with them when they came too.
Well, yes. And with that, our headquarters is off the Nansemond River, a tributary river there. And with that, there's a little island there called Dumpling Island. And if I may tell you a little short story there. So the tribe being, we feel where we are right now on the shore of the Nansemond River. By the way, the Nansemond means fishing point, the name. Okay. But it's an Algonquin, from the Algonquin language. Mm-hmm. But so as Hella Roundtree, I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She's written quite a few books herself. But she, in one of her fact finding, the Native Americans were living on the shore. They welcomed the English and the Spaniards. They tried to help educate them as far as how to live off the land.
Okay.
And it boils down to really, they were lazy. I mean, it come around time for winter, and they had stored virtually nothing. But the Nansmans had this island called Dumpling Island where they stored their foods and their wares to get them through the winter. They knew what they had to store up to make it. Mm-hmm. So the English attempted to come and trade, bargain with the Native Americans, and they said, no, we know what we have to make it through the winter. Mm-hmm. And so when they couldn't cut a deal, so to speak, in today's terms, they just decided, well, you won't trade with us. We can't buy it. Money didn't mean anything to Native Americans. So they just decided they would go and raid the food pantry. Mm-hmm. And then that starts as a sign marker has on the road. It started a skirmish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, started a skirmish, meaning a disagreement.
Right.
And so part of that marker was indicating the savages.
Right.
So we became savages because we didn't want we didn't want to trade with them. We wanted to give up our food. And that's coming from a Native American, that part of the story. Mm-hmm. The English, Spaniards, they could tell it whatever way they want. But I know that the island exists. I know that everything that Native Americans did was about taking care of their people. And I want to make a strong point. Native Americans never took more from the land than what they needed.
Beautiful.
And that's sometimes
there's a difference.
Correct. And they survived.
Yes.
They utilized, they didn't waste anything. And I'm proud of that point as a Native American. Mm-hmm. But the land, as the English and all, once this started and all, that started a lot of the skirmishes, and yes, things got out of hand on the way that and then, we dealt with disease. The Native Americans, the English, the Spaniards, they brought disease with them. Mm-hmm. And a little side note is when they had disease, and the clothes that they had and the people died, they donated their clothes off the people that died to the natives and gave it to them, which many times they end up.
They passed it on is what happened.
They passed it on. But like I said, I'm a Native American.
Sure.
I'm a past chief. I'm not angry. I'm not mad.
It's history.
It's history. So I look at this, Dr. Shelley, as like in today's time, an automobile has a rearview mirror in it. Mm-hmm. And I look at that rearview mirror to remember what happened.
Yes.
But I got this windshield with a visionary of where we can go now and live with things to make it day to day in the world that we're in now and preserve the future for my children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, on and on. So that's where I am as a past chief.
And as an African American, I'm going to say we share those same values. And the big key word is preservation and remembering, but also bringing out the truth. And I'm going to say it a different way than you said. I'm not going to be angry about it. But that's the history. That's how we got where we're at right now. But I also have to hold on to say we can't repeat any of this, that what happened in the past.
That's
and
why
if it's what happened here about us talking about the Dismal Swamp, because when I've done reading about this and learning about the Dismal Swamp, and they categorize it as a place, so I think there might be two perspectives, but freedom seekers, and I think of the enslaved going. But you growing up as a native, when did you first hear about the swamp, or that your people were there surviving, living, and then the Africans or African Americans coming in? Because it's almost like they work together to survive in that swamp. And it seems to be and I look at it as a protective community for all the people that were there connected. Can you share some insight on that?
absolutely. I'm biting my tongue now, waiting for you. But that's okay. Yes, and there's some proven facts that comes out of it. I hope I don't miss the point towards the end of what I'm going to say. But yes, I mentioned the swamp was dense.
Dense, yes.
And so there were Native Americans and slaves. There was even some immigrants, possibly.
Correct.
What they discovered, if they can make it to this Dismal Swamp place, it was dreary, wet, buggy.
Yes.
And the thing that protected them was they didn't have no security. Their security system was the swamp itself, of it being so dense. But these people that I named off, slaves, Native Americans, immigrants, for whatever reason, escaped. If they made it there, they became part of a community which is referred to as Maroons. And this community survived in there, in the swamp. The authorities or the armies or whatever, if they wanted to go in there, I got a feeling that when they decided they were going to go and take a group of men and go in there and find these people, they went, I think, at the worst time of the year, because the mosquito, it's a swamp.
It's a swamp, yes.
The bugs will literally bites on top of bites, and then you're tripping over the undergrowth, and it's just I think it's more dense than say what as we see on television as a jungle. But I've been in the swamp many times, and you want to know when did I realize it? Well, in one of the storytelling podcasts that I've done is I talk about being a young teenager and my uncle taking me into the Dismal Swamp to go raccoon hunting.
Oh, goodness.
It's a nighttime hunting.
You're talking to a vegetarian here.
Okay.
I get it.
So, as 13, 14 years old,
yeah, sure.
My dad carried me to my uncle's house. We went at nighttime. He hands me a flashlight, says, "When I tell you, boy, you shine that light up in the tree." Yes. So I go hunting, I'm tripping, it's damp. I trip over these cypress knobs that is in the swamp and all, and 3 or 4 times. I was not completely soaked, but it was starting. I was cold. Hunting dogs run a raccoon up a tree. My uncle says, "Hey, boy, shine that light up
And the
there."
light.
And when I
That's great.
shined the light in the tree, what
Uh,
was in the tree when it hit the eyes, it jumped towards me
oh
and,
my.
and it knocked me back into the water.
Right,
I
right.
was soaked then, and what it was a bobcat.
Oh,
I remember getting up and not venting much to my uncle
mhm. Right.
about it. I just trying to do the best, and I start thinking to myself, if I ever get out of here. So I got home about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was on a Saturday morning. I didn't have to go to school. My dad gets up, helps me get in to take a bath, and
Right.
in doing that, I said, "Daddy, if I ever ask you to go raccoon hunting again, tell me no,
No,
no, no." And I
that's a
have never
great
been
example.
hunting again like that
Yeah.
in the dark. But back to the Dismal Swamp being so dense,
Yeah.
the English, and no doubt there was probably maybe small groups that went into there
Mm-hmm.
authoritatively, and they didn't come back. So they
Well,
were
I've
scared.
read that there's generations that lived throughout this Great Dismal Swamp, generations of people.
Yes, yes, that's
So
right.
that swamp not only provided protection, but somehow they're living off of what's there, number
Absolutely.
one. And I also think of medicines and herbs and what else was there that they were tapping into because they had to grow things to have food.
Right.
And again, generations and what I'm learning, generations of people are there. I don't think there's anybody there now, but I can't even say. But just the generations that people, once they got there, who was around there, they survived in there. And again, they labeled them as freedom seekers, the Maroon communities. And so I'm glad you brought up that term because I actually did a Google search. And just for clarification for the audience, Maroon communities were groups of freedom seekers who escaped slavery and created their own self-sustaining community, often in places like the Great Dismal Swamp, where they could live beyond the reach of the slave catchers in colonial control. But that's also the same for the Native American. They're there. They're
Yes.
also living in there and surviving in there. And there's generations of people that are tied to that land. And it's almost who what was created as a safe place. And I'll say it as that because we research and we find these communities. So I want to make a couple points for the audience that if they are tracing their family and they're close to these areas, that there's sources out there that might be able to get you back. And again, and I'll come from the African American side, and then I'm going to ask you about on the the nation side, because for us, I'm a genealogist as well. I'm going to look for runaway slave ads that might have connection around the areas of the North Carolina and Virginia, because sometimes they will describe in those runaway ads about the swamp or mention something about swamp. And that could be a first indicator and things like that, or anything that has to do, and I'm going to say the swamp again, logging, boating, hunting, anything for swamp survival. So again, we would tap into any ads. There's a big national Chronicling America where you got newspapers and databases on there, and there could be clues in some of those ads. So coming to the nation, and again, you got oral history just like we do in African American community, and we got generations of stories coming down. And you shared a story, and again, we share with our children and so forth. So if someone not necessarily Native American, because they will have that oral history if they're connected. But if we wanted, would people contact the nation to find more information, or would you say go online and read and listen to the storytelling that's happening, the survival, or certain surnames? Has that research been done as far as who was in there and on the nation side? Does that make sense?
Well, since we've been federally recognized, we
Okay.
had what we called enrollment. We already
Got
had we were state recognized prior in the mid 1980s, and we weren't federally recognized until 2018, January 28th.
Got it.
And that came about with the President Donald J. Trump January 28, 2018. And with that came, we had to form a registrar, and we had enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
We right now have enrollment closed. Understand, we have, I'm sure it's hundreds of people wanting to be recognized as a Native American.
Sure.
And not to say that they're not, but what we require them to do when we do have our enrollment open is you have to do the legwork of going to cemeteries, birth certificates, death certificates, marriage, all that. The burden is on the applicant.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, we're right now, like I said, we have closed our enrollment, and we're trying to get our feet more solid on a foundation of accepting additional applications and all. So it's very involved, as you know.
And doing genealogical research, and also what you identified as also things that folks have to go through if they're looking at lineage type societies. The burden is going to be on the applicant to reach that out. And that's why I wanted to share resources if there's African American or Native American that have people, and I'm going to say within that area. And again, it's not that they have to live in Virginia or North Carolina. You can be anywhere in the world, but if your ancestry comes from that area, you want to tap into this. And one of the things I would say is first learn about the Great Dismal Swamp. What is out there? We know it was a refuge for people, and I'm saying as African Americans that ran too. Well, the indigenous people were there. There's a difference. They're not running to seeking freedom per se. This is where they were at and where they lived. So I want to make that distinction, because for African Americans that are enslaved, they're definitely going into hiding. And again, for generations, and clarify if I'm incorrect on the Native side as well.
Well, on the Native side, many did have to go there.
Okay.
Because of the Spanish and the immigrants coming in.
So they're seeking freedom.
Pushing it. Right. Because I'm trying to, how would I say this? It's part of just I call it like a big bully. Just, you ask, you can say no, but that doesn't mean to say they're going to like it. So as I gave the story about Dumpling Island, then they just go and take. So it's something that I've learned on my journey. I'm not anti-government. I've traveled overseas. I know I live in the greatest country on the face of this earth. And our nation, Indian nation, is a Christian-based tribe. And as a Christian myself, I'm trying to preserve something for my children, grandchildren, and now I have 2 great-grandsons. So I want them to know what has preceded them, but not with an attitude, not with
Correct.
hatred in their heart.
Correct.
Go
And that's
ahead.
on both sides. And it's just about, because like I shared with you, I never heard of the Dismal Swamp until I moved to Virginia. Why didn't I get some of that information shared? I was doing genealogy in Michigan, in the places that I lived. And until something presented it, I had no idea. But again, I knew Runaway. I heard of Maroons, but I wasn't able until I started reading and listening and having conversation to find that out. So those are all tips to share. Start asking questions.
Sure.
And the thing of it is, one of the things we teach at the Midwestern African American Genealogy Institute is to go local. Don't rely on just what's online, because not everything is online. Go to the community, go to the area, talk to the people that were involved. These records and anything that comes out would have been generated and made at that local level.
Right.
And just because now we might see it online doesn't mean we don't have to exhaust that local level. And that's for Native American, African American, whoever it is. You have to exhaust that local level resources first, because there's so much that is not online, even though we got millions. And so looking at this, we know history, my opinion only, is kind of being covered, could also say erased. And you've mentioned more than once about preserving. And I think this is what we're all trying to strive for. But we also got to get that history out and then try to hold on to it. And again, one way is storytelling. And I think that's critical within anybody's family, is to be able to share. And I share with my children any findings that I find, even if they're not interested, they would have heard it. And that's an important step. And I'm sure you do the same thing with your family, like you said, down to great grandsons and so forth. So how does the nation, do they offer, are there workshops? Can people, there's a website, is there information that people can learn more about the tribe, and even the information as far as now being federally recognized,
yes,
that we could access?
You can go on Nansemond.gov, Nansemond.com,
Okay.
and there's a wealth of information there. You can pull up the Nansemond Indian Nation, or tribe, use that word, and it will give you history and background. We are very connected to the swamp and the community, and it's evident by Native Americans who live everywhere, and not everywhere, in a lot of places, because when farmers are plowing and disking, they turn up and find tools, sometimes bones, and then with all the building that's going on in our nation, they're when they go dig footings and slabs and things, they're turning up things, finding out that there was people here a long time before some of the recorded history of a group of people. So with that being said, I'm terrible as a hunter. I'm terrible about walking on the edge of a field, going to where I'm going to hunt, or coming out or around a water hole or a stream. I see an odd-shaped rock or anyway.
You're picking it up.
I pick it up, and I have walked out of the woods, and I have 4 or 5 maybe rocks, maybe the size of a baseball. And I go, what am I doing this for? I got to hunt all day with this, But that's okay. I mean, some of them, it has, those stones have a story behind them. Someone held those stones and sat somewhere and made cornmeal. They cracked corn. Those stones were used by a human hand, and it's history.
It's history. So another question: how does respectful collaboration look like when you've got tribes, historians, conservationists, and government agencies all working together on shared landscapes like the Dismal Swamp. Has that experience happened?
Yes, it's happened a great deal. And like I said, right now, it just finished up. I think it was in September of last year that they did a study on the preservation. Might I add, there are canals in the Dismal Swamp that were dug by slaves. These canals were wide enough, deep enough, and long enough that you could take 40, 50, 60-foot trees, float them out of the swamp to where they could be loaded onto a barge. So what's fascinating is that these slaves, sadly, they were slaves that dug it, not free people. But some of the onlookers, I'm sure, that were living in knew that this was going on and just kept their distance from the people that was in charge of the dig and taking the lumber out of the swamp. This preservation of what it hasn't got a bill number yet, but we're hoping that it will soon be picked up to where it will guarantee 100,000 acres that won't ever happen again, that the wood would be stripped of the swamp. And there's a lake in the swamp called Lake Drummond.
A lake, well, Drummond, that's something significant also, that last name. Is that, well, I'll let you go ahead and say.
Well,
so Lake Drummond.
Lake Drummond is within the Dismal Swamp, and it's providing part of what the Indians in there, or part of the Maroons, the people that were living in there. They had just about all the species of animals. They had fish. They had, as you said, there were some high places where they could grow something, but they had herbs and all. The point, if your listeners, is they learn different color of skins, but they learn to survive together. They got along, I'm sure. I'm sure they had, every now and then, you get someone acting the fool, as they say. But they get straightened out, because what was the alternative? To be banished and go back out to where someone's looking for you? Waiting for them, yes. Waiting, yes. So I feel like that they learned to get along.
And again, it's really about survival as well. And then again, we're talking about families and not just individuals. You had families, African Americans, Indigenous, and I want to ask a question, which is totally off to the side. Is it proper to say Native American or Indigenous American or Indigenous? What does you, as a Native American or Indigenous descendant and so forth, is there a proper way of addressing this?
That discussion comes up quite a few times.
Okay.
And it's different tribes, different Native different Indians have different opinions. When I hear the word Native, for me, means I was here.
Okay.
I was Native, I'm here, but I'm Indigenous, I'm Indian.
Yeah.
So for me, I think Indigenous identifies to people reading in books and history in schools that they were of a different color, a different race. But for me, Native, I was here. I'm still here, and don't plan on going anywhere.
Well, I appreciate
you feel that way too. I mean, all of our races.
Sure.
We need to be proud of where we've been,
and where we came from.
Were we always treated equal? No. Will we in the future be treated equal? Most likely, no. But it's kind of like I don't try to talk to young people about this fact that I'm getting ready to say, other than it just seems like that people or organizations and authority always keep their thumb, as they say, on the scale.
Mm.
Example,
So,
my father went to school,
mm-hmm.
and as Caucasian could go to school at that time 11 to 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Native Americans at that time was the 8th grade.
Yeah.
African Americans, if they allow them, period, to go, but if they did, it was less than that.
Yeah.
So when the three races audience would go apply for a job, it could be digging ditches.
Right.
And as my father tells me, there's a overpass in the city of on the border of the city of Suffolk and Chesapeake, Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
and he went to apply for a job. Well, your hiring agenda was your education was 75% of your qualification.
Right.
So from the get-go, Caucasian had more education.
Higher up, yeah.
Right. So he tells me that he worked for 50 cents a day.
Mm.
I don't recall what year that was, but in working, hauling dirt in a wheelbarrow at the load. But anyway, they didn't have the machinery like they got now. But he said that's what he made. But he never talked that much about his Native American heritage. But he did tell me that, and I was a young teenager, and he was making sure that I would get an education. He asked me to promise him that I would at least graduate from high school.
High school.
And I promised him that I would. Now, I tell you what, I despise school. But you know, my promise many times and my thought would surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, no, I promised my daddy I would get a high school education.
Yeah.
And I've learned that it was one of the best promises, other than me promising to serve God and become a Christian and accept Jesus Christ. that promise to my father, even now, pays dividends. At least getting a high school diploma.
Sure.
So with that,
and that's even changing now with the differences in the education systems on the federal level, state level, and so forth.
Correct.
And so, you know, and there's a time, you know, like I said, you know, in my own family, yeah, you're gonna graduate high school. But I was the only girl in my family. I have 4 brothers. And that push to go a little bit more was really pushed on me, and to do more, be involved more, you know, and of course, community work. And I'm glad that you brought up youth looking ahead. So we've got this area, and I believe it's protected. The Dismal Swamp is a protective area. And is it under National Park Service or?
It is. Right?
Okay, it is under National Park Service. So another resource for the audience, you can go to the National Park Service and research what they have online. So Chief Bass, what is your vision for the future of that Great Dismal Swamp, and how can the listeners support either the tribal sovereignty, cultural preservation, or just simply responsible stewardship? And what can we do to help support? And again, and this is for African Americans. And again, I see this community as we're all in this together, because they were in that swamp together and survived. So how can we help and get more educated about this specific area? Because there's the stories out there how they live. You talked about it being dense. This was not no beach area or anything. You talked about bugs and this, that, and other. And I can't imagine some of the stories that come down in families that they talk about this swamp area or just looking on TV. But I'm looking to this next generation and generations in the future. What can we, as say, family historians, genealogists, brothers, sisters, be able to help make sure this doesn't go away? And I know there's other places, but this one specifically.
Yes, there's also close to the Dismal Swamp. There's quite a few um, schools that were they're being acknowledged that were predominantly Black schools, and then there was an Indian school called it was number 9, and so there's a church in the Indiana it was an Indiana Methodist church. Our nation, we have that church now. It was turned over us about less than a year ago. And so there used to be an Indian school there, and my father went to that school. But back in that day, there was like 9 boys under my grandfather. When they can get up and work a mule, plow, disc, swing an axe, they were not allowed to go to school. I mean, which my father tells the story. So your question, though, is that there's outlying history all around the Dismal Swamp. And the Black community, the Indigenous or Native American community, we all know it's part of our history. And what I would ask that the audience would do is that, because you don't get it in your history books, you only get an idea about slavery and the indigenous race of people. You only get that from watching things on television, cowboys and Indians and that type of thing. But history is really an interesting thing. And what I would ask for the support is that when this bill comes up, because there are tours that you can go to. The city of Suffolk has a tourism. They do take people on a bus. They go to the Dismal Swamp. The parks are open. The Dismal Swamp is open for visitation, and there's hiking trails. There's birding events. There's things that the community is really, and the parks, national parks, is really trying to expose the swamp to the public for different events and all. So if you see any of that, or you come in the area of the Dismal Swamp, look up online what's available, and enjoy the outdoors. And on those hiking trails, I think they've got one that's referred to as it can be a little challenging, and then there's one that's not so challenging. So depends on.
But it sounds fascinating as well.
But if it's from the spring to the fall, you better have some bug spray.
And wear boots?
Well, no, the trails and all are such that, they want to keep you.
Okay.
People go off trail, they get lost.
Oh.
So
how many acres is pretty much left now? Because I've heard different sizes. What's
about
left?
100,000 acres.
100,000 acres. So for me as a researcher, framing this Great Dismal Swamp is like a genealogical landscape. I mean, and because of, like you said, what's around it. So we also have the freedom seekers coming through there, but it ended up being a long-term place where people were at generations, as I mentioned before, because now you got a community that's in there. And like we both already said, they're basically Native American and African Americans, they're living together somewhat. They're surviving together. So looking at it that way, they've got the community. They got kinship networks. There could be other things that are included, but could there also be migration out of there? You know what I'm saying? Did people come out? I know per se that there's not anybody in there now, but people that come out, did other communities maybe get established if they left the swamp, say after slavery ended, and so it's not the refuge? Did people come out and set up communities around that swamp? Because to me, I think that would still be the safe place always. I'm not going too far,
right. I think they did some of that, but I think they also tried to blend in with society, with things. And it's really sad to understand that in a community on the outskirts, you could have Native, indigenous people, and you could have free slave people. But if a crowd of people, isn't this sad? Correct me if you think I'm wrong, but if a group of people got drunked up or whatever and said, "Well, let's go," they want to feather and tar. Someone say, "Let's go to the outskirts of the town." It's anyway. That's part of looking in the rearview mirror, and seeing that that's the way it was. To where I when I start thinking about putting myself back in that day, I just have to go, well, I got to look out the windshield because it's the future.
So I'm going to share a few more resources for the listeners, and then I want to come back and ask that you talk a little bit about the collective, because I know there's a website, there's a story map on there that shows the area and stuff, but just to share, but I want to share records or resources for people to think of. I already mentioned about the runaway slave ads and things like that. But for the listeners, don't forget the Freedmen's Bureau. That's 1865 to 1872. And there could be connections in there of people that, slavery's supposed to be over. Could be labor contracts we could look at where people are coming out and acquiring jobs, but that would be after Civil War. Also reading, I'm going to say United States colored troops pension records. There could be mention of something of the swamp if they're in these areas. And of course, church registries, cemeteries, and things that, the chief listed, but also think about things if they're within this, and I keep saying a protective site because that's how I see it. It's a refuge. It's a safe place, and they have to come out and, like you said, blend in. So then records are created once they're out and blending in. So think about, and I would say Library of Virginia would probably be one stop, place to look at and see what records they have online or discussion, or see if there was any other talks that have come up. And newspaper ads, of course, we got National Archives, National Park Service, but don't forget just regular estate records and plantation records, because especially in wills, because for some reason there could be a note that so-and-so ran to the swamp, or something in there that folks that are from that area, you got to think a little bit more than just that one community you're looking at. Who is around your people? And finding out. And of course, we always look for plantation records and things like that. But I really think the Library of Virginia, the collective, and so forth are really critical factors in finding out besides the local community. So as far as the Great Dismal Swamp Collective, and you're part of that, Dr. Alexandra Sutton is also part of that. And tell us what what can we do to help that if it's the same as being supportive? And the link, of course, will be in the chat, but for folks to visit that site. But what are you or that collective doing that we need to know as the public in the community?
Well, we are a group. We meet twice a year, and you can go on a website to the Great Dismal Swamp Collaborative, and you could see the background there. We were formed approximately 6 years ago, and Dr.
Sutton.
Lawrence, yes, Sutton approached me, as I mentioned earlier, but and with that, we were able to start this with a group of 3 people on the collaborative, and it's grown now to where, I mean, we meet twice a year. We will be meeting in June. I think it's the first Thursday in June. We already have a meeting set up, and if you are interested in getting on like an email list of being contacted, because we do a virtual meeting as well as in person. So it's an open door for anyone who want to be a part of it and to join the group. And so because we're looking for, as this podcast is doing, we want people to be interested in the history, and it could also be their own history if they have the time. And you will admit it takes a great deal of time to do the research and all. I might want to add that the reason why so many records were missing, I mean, during the Revolution War, the Civil War, part of these armies, after they went and took a community, they would burn the
courthouse and the records. Yes,
they burned everything down and destroyed it. So this made it tough on a lot of people not being able to find records.
That's where the oral history would come in then.
Yes.
A lot of that. So, and I'll say this to the audience, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and put the Q in front of them if you can. But do we know numbers? Is there numbers of how many people were in there, Native American or African American? Because we're talking about generations, and I think thousands when I hear it that way, and I don't know. Is there a number that the nation or the collective uses as far as how many people went in there for refuge and so forth?
That's a great question. And to be honest, I cannot tell you that as to only that I'm not saying it's not recorded somewhere. I just have never had that.
I didn't find it. That's why I'm asking.
Right. I've never read or anything about the number of people, only that there were different people. I mean, even it's possible that even some of the immigrants that.
Yeah, there was whites there also.
If they had done something or whatever and wanted to get away, it was known. You make it to the Dismal Swamp, you got a chance to live.
It's just it's the survival that is so fascinating, and the conditions that were there, which the dense area, as you speak of, to me, this gives a little bit. But when I think of the bugs and when I see swampland pictures or something on TV and thinking about birthing, raising my children, or whatever it is in there, unbelievable. But people did it and they survived, and they did rely on each other and work together. And I think that's the beauty of what happens. And I could say from the African American perspective, we're seeking freedom and same as the indigenous folks as well. And that was a safe place. And I'm glad that we're talking about this, at least to get people thinking or asking questions. And I'm going to say North Carolina, Virginians, and in these areas along the swamp and around Suffolk County and so forth. And it's critical for number one, to make sure it gets talked more about and visiting that swamp. So it looks like we do have a question. One line in the song is carry me back to old Virginia. There let me live till I wither and decay. Long by the old dismal swamp have I wandered. There's where the old darkey's life will pass away. And I actually have heard of that saying in the song. And again, that's coming down history, right there. And so thank you for the HBCU Heritage Home for recognizing that. And so, Jennifer, are there any questions in the chat that we can share or you can put up? And there we go. She's coming on. And don't forget slave narratives, folks. That's another resource to look at to find out if anyone talks about, going to that swamp, surviving that swamp, or their ancestor coming out of there. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sure. So you have a couple questions. So I will, actually, that was already answered. Chief Bass mentioned the storytelling podcast. Can you share the name of the podcast for our listeners?
It's under the Dismal Swamp collaborative link website that you would go right website.
Okay, I'll share that into the chat for everybody in just a few minutes. All right. Will Maroon descendants, such as the person commenting, be able to join and continue to share culture knowledge and help protect each other? I think they're referring to the collective. Can they just join the collective, which I think you guys just discussed a little bit about? Yes. Can they join with that link when I share it, or at least send a message?
They can send. Yep.
All right, I had one more question here from the HBCU Heritage Home. Oh, that's actually what we just talked about. So it looks like we're all cleared up. All right. That's really it for me, guys, as far as questions. I'm going to pop back in the background and I'm going to pull up that link and
I'm going to ask one
last
listeners. Question to the chief before we go out.
Sure.
Okay.
Chief, we've been here a good hour talking about this, shared some resources and so forth. What is the one takeaway you would like people that are listening or that will listen to this recording? What is the one takeaway you want them to know or be aware of about the Great Dismal Swamp?
It comes to my mind, the thing that I've brought up, these different races, they sought safety, human instinct, and they learned to live together peacefully. It can be done. We all are living in a world right now that it just seems so much.
How about chaos?
Chaos, discontent.
Yes.
And with that Dismal Swamp, with that group of people from different races, proved that they could provide for themselves shelter, food, medicine, and they survived and they got along. I would want to see, of course, this isn't a beauty pageant where I wish for world peace, but I would like to just see that people neighborly, that we could be respectful and kind to each other. But it's a challenge. I know that. But I would want them to know that these people, they had fortitude, they were brave, and they had grit. They survived. We can do the same. We're still here.
Yeah. And we're going to be here.
Yes.
And so appreciate that. And so I'm going to do the closing right now and just thank everybody for joining us. Thank you, Chief Bass. It's great to meet you. And you know what? I'm going to have to go down there. I might not be able to go on a tour per se, but I definitely want to go down and visit the area and what's around, any events that come up. And so just want to thank everybody for coming out and joining us, and for Chief, for you sharing your knowledge and also the stories. That warms my heart, because we know generations should be hearing that. And also to the viewers and listeners, whether you joined us on YouTube or StreamYard or Facebook, we appreciate your time and value your time and engagement. So your participation is really critical for us in being able to offer these to you. So one of the things, if you think of a topic or a subject you would like to hear us engage in, send us a note, let us know. And we're wrapping up the next podcast. We're going to set off in the month of February. Every Saturday at 1:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, there is a different podcast through all 4 Saturdays in the month of February. So mark your calendars, join us, and come on. You'll see the advertisement. And so until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep connecting with your history. From all of us at the International African American Museum, Center for Family History, take care and have a wonderful day. Thank you, Chief Bass. I'll be in touch. Thank you very much. Jennifer, thank you also. Have a good one, everyone.
It was my honor.
Thank you.